The evening was quiet when I arrived, carrying with me nothing more than the excuse of a casual visit. The house had its own stillness, the kind of silence that lingers after guests have left, leaving only the faint hum of everyday life. I stepped inside, expecting the usual warmth of greetings, but what I found was something altogether different, an air of anticipation, though I couldn't quite place why. I was led into the living room, where polite conversation passed in brief exchanges. Yet even within those ordinary words, there was an undercurrent, an awareness I couldn't ignore. From the corner of my eye, I noticed the way his presence filled the space, deliberate but unspoken. He didn't need to announce himself. The weight of his gaze was enough to make my pulse quicken. The others drifted away, each lost in their routines, and before I knew it, the house had grown quiet again. He suggested I rest for a while, his voice calm, almost casual, yet carrying an authority I didn't dare question. Without hesitation, I followed him down the narrow hallway, my footsteps echoing against the tiled floor. The door closed softly behind us, and I realized I had stepped into a part of the house I had never been invited to before. The room carried a scent, a blend of something aged yet familiar, heavy in the air. My eyes moved across the neatly arranged furniture, the bed positioned perfectly in the center, as though it was waiting. He gestured for me to sit, and though my body felt light, almost trembling, I obeyed. The softness of the mattress beneath me contrasted with the sudden heaviness of the moment, as if gravity itself had shifted. He said little, but words weren't necessary. His silence held more meaning than any confession could. I avoided his eyes at first, pretending to study the details of the room. The curtains swaying gently in the draft, the faint ticking of a clock on the wall, but inevitably, I felt drawn back. There was no escaping the intensity of his stare. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The air grew thick, heavy with unsaid things. My mind raced with questions I couldn't voice. What am I doing here? Why does this feel inevitable? The pull of something forbidden tugged at me, stronger than reason, stronger than fear. I lay back slowly, the fabric of the sheets cool against my skin, and the sound of my own heartbeat loud enough to fill the silence. He didn't rush, didn't move closer right away. Instead, he lingered, as if savoring the power of suspense, knowing the effect it had on me. Every second stretched into eternity, and yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. I told myself I should get up, that this was a mistake, but my body betrayed me. My breath grew shallow, my chest rising and falling with quick, uneven rhythm. I sensed the inevitability of what was about to happen, and though part of me resisted, another part, the stronger one, surrendered. When he finally stepped nearer, the shift in space was undeniable. The room felt smaller, the bed felt larger, and my world narrowed to the closeness between us. His shadow loomed over me, silent but heavy with meaning. I closed my eyes for just a moment, not to escape, but to prepare myself for the line we were about to cross. Every fiber of me was alive, caught between fear and anticipation. The boundaries of right and wrong blurred in the quiet of that room, and in that blur, desire found its home. I told myself it was just a moment, that nothing permanent would come of it, but deep down I knew, there are some choices you cannot take back. And as the first unspoken act of betrayal began to take shape, I realized that I had already chosen long before I entered the room. The hours seemed to fold into each other after that night began to unravel. I had convinced myself that it was nothing more than chance, that his invitation into the room meant little, yet the memory of the way his eyes lingered made it impossible to forget. Every sound in the house felt sharper, as though the walls themselves were aware of the secret that was quietly forming. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to return to the comfort of ordinary conversation when others were near, but it was already too late. A shift had taken place inside me, and pretending otherwise only made it more obvious. The next day, the house appeared unchanged. Sunlight streamed across the tiled floor, voices moved casually between rooms, and yet beneath the surface, something else stirred. He passed by me in the hallway with a glance that lasted longer than it should have, subtle enough for no one else to notice, yet piercing enough to leave me unsettled. It was as if we both carried the same weight, bound by something we hadn't spoken of yet couldn't undo. When evening returned, I found myself drawn again toward the part of the house that I should have avoided. My footsteps slowed as I reached the familiar door, but I didn't knock. It opened quietly from the inside, as though he had been expecting me. No words were exchanged, but the silence was louder than anything we could have said. The room welcomed me again, its stillness a mirror of my own unspoken turmoil. I sat on the edge of the bed, telling myself that this time I would resist, that I had only come to prove my strength. But when he approached, calm and deliberate, I felt that strength dissolve. He didn't rush, didn't press. He simply allowed the moment to breathe, as though giving me the chance to leave. Yet I didn't. My body leaned toward his without thought, my mind already surrendering to a truth I no longer wanted to deny. The intimacy of those moments was not loud or hurried. It was quiet, deliberate, and heavy with meaning. Every movement seemed to carry an echo, a reminder that what we were doing existed outside the safety of daylight. My breath quickened, not only from the nearness but from the awareness that I was crossing a threshold I could never step back from. The more I tried to rationalize, the deeper I sank into the gravity of it. When it was over, we didn't speak. The silence between us was both comforting and terrifying. I could feel his eyes on me, studying me not with the curiosity of someone meeting me for the first time, but with the certainty of someone who already knew what he had claimed. I avoided his gaze, staring instead at the pattern of the curtains, the soft folds of fabric that swayed gently as if mocking the stillness between us. Leaving the room that night felt different. The air outside seemed heavier, my footsteps more deliberate, as though I carried a secret stitched into my very being. Each sound in the hallway reminded me of the life that carried on, oblivious to what had just transpired behind closed doors. I smiled faintly when I saw others, answered their questions with ease, and yet underneath, a storm raged. In the quiet of my own space, I replayed every detail. The way he looked at me, the way I couldn't bring myself to resist, the way guilt and desire tangled together until I could no longer tell them apart. I knew it wasn't love in the purest sense, at least, not the kind one would confess openly. It was something darker, born from secrecy, nurtured by the thrill of knowing it should not exist. And yet, in that forbidden soil, it grew stronger. As I lay awake, I realized that what had begun could no longer be dismissed as a fleeting mistake. It had taken root. The thought of avoiding him, of staying away, seemed impossible. A dangerous comfort had wrapped itself around me, whispering that I would return, that he would be waiting, and that this was only the beginning. And so the line between right and wrong blurred further, leaving me trapped in a place where I could neither escape nor fully surrender, caught in a story that I knew could never end cleanly. The days that followed unfolded with a strange rhythm, as if the house itself had conspired to hide our secret within its walls. Every glance across the table, every brush of his hand as we passed in the hallway carried the weight of what we had already done, and what we both knew we would do again. The ordinary life of the household continued in its familiar pattern, yet between us, the ordinary no longer existed. One evening, as the others busied themselves elsewhere, I found myself drawn once more to the silence of his room. The door stood slightly ajar, as though waiting, and I stepped inside without hesitation this time. He was there, seated calmly, as if he had been expecting me all along. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, charged with all the things we dared not say aloud. When I sat beside him, the distance between us dissolved effortlessly. There was no pretense now, no hesitation cloaked in polite gestures. It was as though we had both surrendered to something larger than ourselves, something that pulled us together despite every reason to resist. His hand rested on mine, steady and firm, and in that touch I felt both comfort and danger entwined. The night deepened around us as the boundaries finally gave way. What unfolded was not rushed, not reckless, but deliberate, carrying with it the intensity of something that had been waiting to be unleashed. The world outside ceased to exist. The creak of the floorboards, the faint hum of the night air, even the ticking of the clock faded into nothing. All that remained was the closeness, the heat of bodies pressed together, and the undeniable truth that the line had been crossed beyond return. In those moments, desire drowned out guilt, and the forbidden became irresistible. Every breath, every touch seemed to anchor us deeper into the secret we were weaving. It was not tenderness alone, nor passion alone, but a collision of both, wrapped in silence and shadows. And when it finally ebbed, when the stillness returned to the room, I realized that what we had done was no longer just a fleeting act. It had become a bond, heavy with consequence. Lying there afterward, I stared into the dim light, my thoughts a tangle of questions without answers. Was this what I had wanted, or had I simply surrendered to something I couldn't control? I felt his gaze on me, calm and unreadable, as though he knew the storm raging inside me, yet chose to leave it unspoken. No promises were made, no future declared, only the silent acknowledgement that what had begun between us would linger far beyond the night. Leaving his room felt different this time. The weight of guilt pressed heavier, yet beneath it was a strange pull, almost a craving, that I could not ignore. I moved through the house quietly, careful not to disturb the world that carried on in ignorance of what had taken place. My smile at the dinner table, my laughter in casual conversation, all of it became a mask to hide the truth that simmered beneath the surface. As days passed, the memory did not fade. If anything, it grew sharper, embedding itself into every quiet moment, every stray thought. I would catch myself replaying the details, the way his hand had lingered, the way the silence between us had spoken louder than words. And though guilt gnawed at me, I found myself yearning for the secrecy again, for the dangerous comfort of being wanted in a way that defied reason. The future stretched uncertain before me. I knew the risk, knew the price that would be paid if the truth ever surfaced, and yet the thought of stopping seemed impossible. The bond we had formed was not one that could simply be undone by regret or denial. It had taken hold, and whether it destroyed us or sustained us, I knew it would remain a part of me. In the quiet of the night, when the house slept and shadows stretched long across the walls, I understood the truth I had been avoiding. This was no longer just a secret affair hidden behind a closed door. It had become a part of who I was, a choice I could neither erase nor fully embrace. And in that realization, I accepted the inevitable, that the story I had stepped into would not end cleanly, but would haunt me in ways I had yet to imagine.